Hello guys, it's WATCHLOTCH once again, and it's been a very long time, and I'm here to give you something special, a meal for you to use to quench your thirst. We have a strange history of idolizing criminal masterminds. Even thieves who don't necessarily share their raw riches with the poor still seem to retain the adoration of fans who live vicariously through their daring escapades. This is not surprising because lots of people live in poverty and hardship just for the rich to live in comfort. Heists have been a thing for the brave for many years. This art takes many days to months to years of planning because a perfect execution is key. I mean, what's the use of going for a heist and getting caught? You go in, you get it, you spend the money, then you can get caught later. A vivid description of how a heist looks like are portrayed in movies like Tower Heist, Inside Man, Heist, Ocean's 11, Widows.
Why? Because no one thinks we have the balls to pull this off.
And our infamous, all-daring La Casa de Papel.
It's stealing about 2.4 billion euros sound.
All of these movies have hit significantly after they were released, which shows the love the world has for heists. History has taught us that no matter how big the trap, there's always a sneaky mouse willing to steal the cheese. Here is one of history's greatest heists of all time. This heist has been known as the Banko Central Burglary, which was at Fortaleza. About 160 million Brazilian real, which converts to approximately 39 million US dollars, was stolen from the vault of the Banko Central branch located in Fortaleza in the state of Ceará, which was in Brazil. 3 months before the burglary, the criminals rented a commercial property in the center of the city and tunneled 78 meters, that's about 256 feet, beneath 2 city blocks to a position beneath the bank. The gang had renovated the property and put up a sign indicating it was a landscaping company and that they were selling both natural and artificial grass as well as plants, but we all know that they were lying. They were thorough enough in creating the illusion, distributing free promotional baseball caps and even taking out adverts. Neighbors who estimated that the gang consists of between 6 and 10 men described how they had seen van with loads of soil being removed daily, but they understood it to be a normal activity in business. I mean, the tunnel being roughly 70 centimeters squared and it was running about 4 meters beneath the surface, was well constructed, and it was lined with wood and plastic and had its own lighting and air circulating systems. In fact, this tunnel actually had air conditioning and everything, so these guys were not ready to operate in discomfort. They wanted their comfort so that they can be able to execute the best job possible. Unbeknown to the neighbors, they were being witnesses to one of the greatest heists Brazil will ever experience, even to date. They worked for several months. The so-called gardening company was working since March. They had sophisticated equipment including GPS and experts in mathematics, engineering and excavation. These guys were actually in for business. I mean, this was La Casa de Papel 1.0. This is in fact before the real La Casa de Papel. These men were so careful, they actually covered the property in burnt lime. If you didn't know what burnt lime does, let me tell you. Burnt lime or quicklime is a chemical compound known as calcium oxide and is made through the thermal decomposition of limestone or other materials containing calcium carbonate. So when poured over a surface, it corrodes the surface with time, a very short time. Before the police comes, kind of short. The Banko Central burglary was planned over days and months. The planning committee decided that the heist would be carried out on a weekend. On the final weekend, the gang broke through 1.1 meters, that's about 3.6 feet of steel reinforced concrete to enter the bank vault. A considerable amount of time will be required to remove and transport the money due to the volume and weight of the amount that was taken. But it was not a working day. They had all the times to themselves. The vault that weekend had been full of money, brand new notes ready to be released into circulation and old notes that had been withdrawn, perhaps to be incinerated. The bills were not numbered sequentially, making them almost impossible to trace. This money will never see the light of day, not even till now. Now, Wednesday, 2nd August, 12 a.m. The heist happened. Now, around 8 a.m. on Monday, which was 8th August, The forensics department of the Federal Police Bureau in the Brazilian city of Fortaleza received a phone call. A robbery had apparently taken place at the local central bank. Officers grumbled to each other that the interruption to their morning coffee was actually because of a missing computer in one of the banks, but they had no idea. Arriving at the scene of the crime, they realized this was no routine job. During the weekend, thieves had broken into the bank's vault and stolen a record amount of money undetected and without triggering any of the bank's alarms. These guys were very professional and they were more careful than anybody in La Casa de Papel, because Tokyo's problems and all of that, there was no Tokyo in this. As a matter of fact, there was no lady. It was not just the volume of money taken that was extraordinary, but the manner in which the crime had been pulled off. The only concrete information the police had was a copy of the identity document that had been used to rent the building. The name of the leaseholder was Paulo Sergio de Souza, and on his identification card there was a photograph of him bizarrely wearing a hat. Questioning of locals revealed that many people recognized Paulo Sergio. The suspect's name was on everyone's lips, but he had disappeared without trace. He became a folk hero and locals toasted the criminals who had pulled off an apparently perfect victimless crime. By late November last year, certain progress in the case had been made. 13 suspects had been arrested and about 11% of the stolen money was actually recovered. Warrants had been issued for a number of other men with colorful pseudonyms: the German, the Tortured, and the Digger. On the downside, the man suspected of underwriting the tunnel crime, a drug dealer called Luis Fernando Ribeiro, had been kidnapped and murdered, possibly by corrupt policemen. When the crime was perpetrated, the thieves escaped without using guns, but soon after the investigations began, events had turned darker. On 8th October, exactly 2 months after the robbery was discovered, 26-year-old Luis Fernando Ribeiro was kidnapped outside a nightclub in a suburb of Sao Paulo. A few hours later, Marcio, a key defense lawyer acting in the case, received a panic call from Fernando's family. They had received a ransom demand and wanted Marcio to act as intermediary. Marcio met the kidnappers at a suburban petrol station where they allowed him to speak to Fernando via a walkie-talkie before he handed over more than 1 million reais, that's about 246,000 pounds. The kidnappers departed, promising their hostage would arrive later, but Fernando never returned. When people talked of the crime being victimless, it was because the stolen money had been withdrawn from circulation and was therefore taken not from the private accounts, but in effect from the economy itself. Just like I said from the beginning, people are always happy about this heist because they realize that it doesn't affect them, but it affects you either way, but you never know. So, unsurprisingly, the central bank was deeply embarrassed by the publicity surrounding the robbery and refused to comment. The media speculated that the crime was orchestrated not by a rogue gang but by the leaders of Brazil's most powerful mafia organization, the PCC, which stands for Primeiro Comando da Capital. Several of the arrested men were members, and it was thought that much of the money from the crime ended up in the hands of the PCC. The PCC's principal activity is drug trafficking, but the gang also performs kidnapping and robbery. Little is known about the PCC, but the founder, a man nicknamed Galia, which means the big jelly, said that the gang received the cut of the proceedings of big crimes, whether organized by the leaders or by its members lower down. Galia has actually spent most of his life behind bars and is currently serving time in Brazil's highest security jail. He has quite a reputation. He was known to have killed men in prison and has committed numerous violent crimes. But he is also known for his political activism, using the PCC's power to fight for improved prison conditions. In 2002, he quit the PCC after a dispute and is now planning to write a book about his life. In his cell, wearing a yellow prison jumpsuit, he smiles, but he is nervous about speaking in front of the prison guards. He wants to go somewhere more private and in a prison courtyard, unmanacled and able to move about freely before he begins to talk to the media. So after an interview, he says, "No one is going to rob a bank and not make a contribution to the PCC," he said. But what that is depends on the job. It's not a fixed amount, 2 million, 3 million, a good amount. He joked about several of his friends who were good diggers who had been connected to the central bank robbery, but said he knew nothing of Paulo Sergio, the supposed mastermind of the crime. In his low, rasping voice, his final word on the subject was, "I hope the police don't catch Paulo Sergio. He doesn't deserve to be in jail. He deserves to enjoy his life out there with all that money. God bless the man and the person who took it." Like this could be be like one of the best movie endings. I mean, from his isolated place in prison, Galia may have been expressing the sentiments of many other people in Brazil, but the reality was that the perfect crime was likely to have a fairy tale end. This 164 million Brazilian real wasn't divided up between the participants. No way. The logic of the crime is capitalist. What you take in one robbery is actually used to finance another robbery. It never ends because the test is unquenchable. Alright, thanks guys so much for sticking with me. I love you guys so much. It's been actually a very long time I uploaded, and I hope that you guys will stick. We are about to bring you more better and nicer stories on different things which are going to rock you and keep you company. Love you guys so much. Subscribe, don't forget to subscribe, put a like so that we can grow together. Love you guys. See you. Peace out.